All right, so we're recording. I'm talking. I'm not muted. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest and greatest shared decision-making committee. It's there. I think we have who we have. Keenan's at a track meet, so we won't have her today. They're up in Lake George at the moment. But I think we have everyone else here. So just in a quick review of, last minute, we talked about our homework for the code of conduct, about comparing and contrasting some the Salem and Randolph code of conducts to see what's there between the two. And we talked also about inviting some of our BLPT work, and I'll let the principals talk about that we did get how we got some of that word out. So today, we're going to spend some time in breakout, kind of talking about what we compared and contrasted between the two codes, and what we liked in one and what we liked in the other, and how we might want to kind of create in our document, see what we might want to change in our creation for here, so we have that information. That is the set and available for us. From there, it's I would like to go back up and revisit the assistance for 2021 a little bit. And just because the board meeting last night addressed some of those pieces, so I just kind of like to update this group on what some of that conversation was, and some things are headed into some directions that we had talked about. Which is the positive thing. And then talk about from there where the code of conduct will go from here, and then what the rest of the schedule might look like for the rest of the school year. So with that, was there any questions on the minute pieces from the previous meeting? Okay, great. So with that, let's talk about code of conduct. Ms. Adams, why don't you go ahead, and I'm going to let you kind of do the intro piece. Because you did the bulk of the work last year in getting the restorative justice pieces into what we currently have. And Randolph Academy was one of those places that is kind of being held up as a model in the state. While we're doing that, I'll start getting couple breakout groups ready to go, and then we will go from there. So it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. So I know last time a few people weren't here, so I'll just give a quick overview. So last time we just talked a little bit about some of the work we would do this time in terms of looking at our traditional code of conduct, and then whether or not we should add in restorative practices or restorative justice language to that document. And Randolph Academy is one of the schools nationally, and it happens to be in New York State, that is a model and is probably one of the earliest schools to do this work. So they've been at it, I think, now 6 or 7 years, and have really learned a lot from their earlier restorative justice practice. So wanted to just take a quick look at that. I did this afternoon. Some people were having trouble opening one of the documents. We've been finding that when we changed over our website to the new provider, I think in the fall, well, I guess what's happened is some of the links reverted to some older links. So I did send you the more recent copies. I also sent you, so I'll just go through the two documents. So Dr. Glover has the Randolph Academy document in there. So that's a model document that we have. Dr. Glover, do you have the one with the yellow on it from our code, or do you want me to pull that up?
Here, let me see here. I think it
would say with RJ, it'll say code of conduct draft. Yes, that one. So what we had done last year, but there was just so much going on, is that some work had been done last year to look at possibly adding, so this is our traditional code of conduct. We did not end up reverting to this code of conduct, but using Randolph Academy as a model, we did take a stab at putting some in there. We presented it to the board. And then with COVID and everything else going on, we decided to kind of table it to a later time, which is coming up now. And so we just want to work through. So anything highlighted yellow would be some proposed changes. So I thought, just for the sake of time, that you could kind of see a draft copy with some probably the more common restorative language that schools may have in there. And then we could take this and maybe in a breakout groups and then look at the Randolph Academy code and kind of look at, do we like what was added in yellow on ours? Do we want to change it? Do we want to make proposed additions? Do we want to scrap the whole thing and start over? But if you did have time to review this, and we did look a little bit at this last meeting, if you weren't here, that there's a lot of common language that if you looked at any school district's code of conduct, is very similar. So in the beginning, if Dr. Glover scrolls through all these definition pages, for the most part, they're almost going to the definition sections. As he's scrolling through, you'll see this, the Dignity Act section. All of this, as he had mentioned before, is very standard language that maybe the formatting might look a little different, but the Student Bill of Rights and Responsibilities, those are our very required elements. And it's really when you get to the later part of the code, like what is disorderly conduct, what is insubordinate, what is disruptive, we're obligated to talk about those things. Sometimes, so why don't you stop right there? Conduct that is violent, safety, yep, right there would be good. So on this page, conduct that endangers the safety, morals, health, or welfare of others, letter D, those are pretty standard. However, these have some room for additions. So a lot of times you'll see additions that will be made. Like a lot of schools have updated this section a little bit to include vaping material. So you'll see a year or two ago, I think it was the first year that I got here, it was vaping materials or paraphernalia was added in there because that was starting to become a thing. So sometimes you'll update those, or sometimes the state will tell us that we have to update and include certain definitions or change definitions in the code to include something. But generally, you'll also see even this section is very similar. So if you scroll, Dr. Glover, please, just a little more. So this at the bottom, violating gender privacy, that's relatively new. Misconduct on a school bus, students with disabilities. So on the right, where you see Dr. Glover, on the right-hand bottom, where it says for discipline, penalties, and remediation, that's the section that looks a lot different school to school. So again, there are sometimes the introductory narratives, some of the conclusion types, but this is kind of the meat of where we have more flexibility. And traditionally, these are very traditional punitive types of responses. So you have a lot of remedial responses in here. So you'll notice that the yellow sections were additions that were made either referencing Randolph Academy or other schools that had restorative practices in their code, as well as the structured day, the restorative, the structured day, some teachers at the high school participated, Mrs. Northshield, Mr. Fraunhofer, gosh, there was one other teacher, Mrs. Vera, myself, we participated in some restorative workshops last summer. So this was suggested, the structured day, with the idea of including, getting more kids in class. So my thought is that if we broke out into groups, take a few minutes, really review this meaty section number 4, take another look at Randolph Academy, maybe just take a few minutes just to reflect on Randolph Academy. I guess however you want to work in your groups is fine, but maybe even at the beginning, just reflect on Randolph. maybe we know what we like, and what we think should be in there, and then kind of look at what we have. And we might, the one thing to keep in mind is that we can't revert to, the timing needs to be progressive in terms of, it's not suggested that we just throw out all of our remedial and traditional responses. Because this is a progression, as we talked about when we first presented restorative practices a few years ago now, before COVID, that this is a very slow roll. It's very dependent on building community, first within your faculty and staff, and have some leaders in this, and then start building community with your students to really get to the restorative and repair benefits of the process. And that can take 3 or 4 years. So what you want to do is you want to have your language of restorative practices in your code. So as you're able to start working on that, for example, if Danny Felina wants to be a leader in her classroom and Dawn Parker, and they may early on be trained, and if they want to start working on community circles or using circles or working with other staff who want to work on community building, then we have that flexibility to use that, or I have that flexibility to use that in lieu of other options, but that it's not the only option. In the past, and over time, what we just actually talked about administratively is that we were going to look at some professional development over the summer for our new counselors and any of our turnkey staff that would like to be involved in the process now that we're kind of getting into our more traditional school process. And I think we could also have discussions of whether or not we want people even from our group and our BOPTs to be offered to participate in that. But the biggest thing is that we never force restorative circles or process on anybody, that it's a choice. So you'll see that that narrative is down in Part B. And I know it's a lot to digest, so I don't know if anybody had a chance to review this and has any questions just in general about what they saw in the codes before we break out into smaller groups. I know Roz, you're familiar, and Danny, you're familiar. You've done a lot of work in this area, and Dawn, we've done some at our level. I'm not sure how much you've done at the elementary level. Oh, I lost. I think you're on mute, Tara.
We started, well, we were reading the book, I think, the last that we really were talking about it. So it's been a while.
Yeah, before the whole world changed, right? Okay.
Julie, just to clarify, these yellow highlighted sections are proposed
Right.
changes.
Right. Yes. Yes, they have not been changes. So what happened was these were proposed and then these were kind of in progress as proposed changes to 2021 for this year. But then COVID hit, a lot of things happened. We did have some conversations about it, but and I think we even had some discussions about it at a board meeting, but we felt that with the crazy kind of world of COVID that it wasn't time for us to really dig into this. So we wanted just to revisit it now because every year we're required to, the board is required to approve the code of conduct. That is in part of regulation. And so, are we going to recommend to add these in now? Part of this, all of this, based on, and again, referencing Randolph or other readings, or do we want to just say, listen, this is where we're headed, but this is what we want to do for our work and make that proposal to the board? Dr. Glover, did you work on breakouts or?
Yeah, I was just talking to myself because I forgot to hit the unmute button, which is very important to hit. So if you can't see me and I'm wearing a mask and I have my video off, so if you put all that together, you have no idea I'm talking to you in cyberspace. So you think 2 groups are good? We'll do a group of 5, a group of 4. Okay. The ayes have it. So I am just arbitrarily assigning folks to a group. And how long do we want to take to do this? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
My thought would be maybe, I would say 20, because I think some people might need a little refresher if we haven't all just looked at it today.
Okay, so I have it automatically set up to end the groups at 20 minutes. We'll get back and we will regroup. So here we go. Everyone, have fun.
a fast 20 minutes.
It looks like they were having fun. Wait a minute, I'm not sure that was allowed in this breakout group.
I
Yes, sir.
literally just said, I think we're about to time out. We're about to go back, and that was it. So it was kind of a very funny moment. So,
Just impeccable timing. Okay, so that was a fast 20 minutes. It's there. So which group wants to go first? Is there a version of digital rock, paper, scissors? Terry, it looks like you're trying to talk to us and you're doing great, but we
I
can't
was
hear you.
talking to myself.
Oh, okay. That's healthy. That's good. So why don't we'll have our group go first, and I'll just go ahead and summarize it because we had a couple things that we were talking about, and one of those things was about chickens and eggs. About when does the restorative justice language come into place, because we need to have some type of board language that authorizes us to kind of move forward with using restorative practices as a disciplinary practice in the district. But in the same time, we need to be prepared to do that before we put those practices into place. So does the language come in and then the training, or does the training come in and then the language? And we kind of talked about that pieces because there's some very real concerns on both ends with the, we don't want teachers not to be prepared if a restorative piece comes into play, or at least we have a disciplinary plan into place for us to be able to move forward if restorative practice is there. Now, there is a plan that's part of a conversation with the pilot groups into there. So there may be some possibilities in, but does that get treated as a pilot? I'm going to raise my hands above my head so you can see them on the screen. No, pilot that's there before we actually formalize things, or do we do it the other way around? And that was kind of the big piece to it, that we did agree that some type of definition would be appropriate. We've pulled up another model from a public school, because the Randolph Academy isn't a regular good old fashioned public central school district. I happen to know another school district who does this. So after the other group shares, I'll share it with everybody, and we can take a look at it and see how we feel about this language. My group, how did I do? Was there anything that I didn't represent? Julie's talking
Can't
to.
hear you, Julie.
Don got fancy with the thumbs up.
Sorry, I just did the same thing. So I think, one of the things we talked about, and Dawn gave the thumbs up, I saw, is that the presentation of this other one was nice. I guess my thing is that I can see both ways. I feel like we can put some pilot into place. I think that we're not replacing traditional discipline. Circles and community building are used all the time. The circles can be used in a lot of different ways in the classroom. So I don't think we're necessarily violating any code by starting to work and train and work on the basic fundamentals of that community circles at the most fundamental levels, while our teachers are becoming more familiar with how they work and running them, and then, working. And we talked about in the other group that the training, if you didn't see what Karen and I presented quite a while back now about our training, is that you really don't get to those restorative circles for probably at least 3 years. You may dabble in them, but they can be just really good old fashioned conferencing, or just getting everybody together and trying to work through it in a more formal fashion. So, I feel like if we put some definitions in there, I just worry that it's going to be like, well, why are these in here? Where's the rest of it? Or why aren't we doing that? I think we've asked a lot of our teachers this year. So and our faculty and our students, for that matter. And I know that in the elementary, they've been doing circles and community building for 2 years, just as part of their guidance program and, building community. So maybe we just need to take a look at it, get more people trained to have authentic input. I mean, that's my concern is we really want authentic stakeholder input on this. You know, the intention was we thought we would be able to work on that this year. And I think hopefully everybody on the outside looking in could understand why we didn't get to that. And, you know, we're kind of starting next year at year one. So, you know, that was my thought. I think maybe this is just stuff we start to look at and dabble in with that other policy. But, you know, what did you guys think, the other group?
Dr. Glover?
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. I totally agree with you, and I think that's kind of where our group went. And I'm sorry, who was that? You, Karen? I didn't mean
No,
to
me.
interrupt, but I think that
That was
if
Donna.
that one extra level of stress on the high school teachers, not saying that the elementary, but just from my perspective, I think would have put a lot of us over the edge. But I think that it's definitely welcomed to have, as I said in the breakout sessions, the tools to communicate with students, the ability to be able to have conversations with students that will impact and solve some of these issues rather than to have them be buried and continue to be repeated. So it's welcomed, but I think from the perspective of the climate of the staff, it needs to be rolled out slowly so that it's appreciated rather than kind of shoved down people's throats. So thank you for expressing that it has been slightly challenging and taxing.
Dr. Glover, is there a way of writing in to the board that we're going to pilot this with the currently trained people, and instead of having it as truly part of the code of conduct?
We might be able to, and I had a thought on that, Donna, my brain is still turning a little bit, is that we might be able to put something together that's an addendum to the code of conduct, but not
Yeah.
necessarily in the code of conduct, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and
Now-
that's, I think that's what I'm trying to say too. 'Cause-
Yeah, and so the part to remember is this is a direction set by the board.
Correct.
So this is something we're going to do because that's what the Board of Education is set for us to do. And I think there is an understanding of even pre-COVID,
Right.
Then it was Julie and Karen and then Bev, because this is, back when this all started. They did a real nice job of setting that expectation of, slow roll is the only way to do it because it is a systemic change to what the approach to discipline is through there. So what we're used to may still exist, but isn't the primary driver anymore. It's going to be something different, but it takes time for that to happen. When I
Right.
use this as an example, and I say this being critical of nobody, is because I've seen it in many other schools. The PBIS programs you may see in schools. There was PBIS here when I got here 7 years ago.
I know.
It was in place. But if you don't do all the aspects of it, it very quickly turns into a token economy. And that's where it gets to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with a token economy. It can be very effective when used appropriately in the right ways for the right group of kids. That's there. But a token economy is not PBIS. So when we're looking at this type of thing, we want to make sure that it becomes the way we do things and it's something that is sticky, so it sticks to us and it's sustainable as it goes on through the years without, that it just becomes how we do every day there. So that might be a possibility. I know of no rule, regulation, policy, or law that states that you can't do that.
Yeah, I've been trying to look it up to see if there was a prohibit.
No, I think you
And I
can
couldn't
add,
find it. I couldn't find that we couldn't, do that.
So
But-
could we, or even put a statement at the end of that kind of disciplinary second that the board recognizes that the district or, the K through 12 or whatever is exploring the possibility of restorative practices and supports, you know, I don't know, exploration of them. I just, there's something like that, of just making a statement in that section that the board recognizes and supports, you know, continued work and exploration of restorative practices, and maybe defining restorative practices just in general, and just kind of leaving it that. And then each year we kind of add in, so then maybe next year, if we had a more regular year and we had success in really building community circles and community practice, we might then start to refer to that, as Don had referenced. Maybe we just build it in a little bit at a time. You know, that might be a way to go. Or we might say, hey, listen, we're pretty comfortable. We've been trying, you know, we build community, and we're gonna next year try some level 2s. Maybe then we put in 1 and 2. I don't know. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. There's crazy going on here. I'm gonna be quiet.
We can still see and hear you, but we really, you know, I'm going to play timekeeper. And, you know, other group, what else did you talk about in your breakout session?
Sorry, eating a caramel. So, just threw myself under the bus there. So we were, you know, we went through, there were a couple of things actually, Tara had noticed some verbiage and things that were used. I went through and I was highlighting it and made some notes. But we were really we talked a little bit about the whole waiting the year and coming in and doing it now and getting back on it. We talked about some of the purposefulness of it, like why we're doing it, how it really is impactful, it can be helpful, especially during this time. And we all talk about the whole mental health piece and how, you know, that's such a big part of this school and this culture, and utilizing this as being part of restorative rather than punitive, and supporting and helping is definitely a much better way to go. So we were kind of talking about that. But what was interesting is the question was posed of who is the audience that reads this. So we were kind of talking about how it's it's the district policy, it's kind of overseeing for everyone. And so the conversation came up of, well, who do you think really reads it? And sharing a personal story, you know, I said to my daughter, like 2 years ago, we got the whole handbook and all of those pieces and went through all of it together and kind of went over the rules. I said, we need to go through this. She goes, why? We've never gone through it before. You know, like who really looks at it? Who's your audience? Who's going to be reading it? So when we were kind of reading through it, I think that there's some pieces that we just kind of got, I don't know, stuck on with that. I don't know, you guys were part of that conversation. Just that it kind of didn't read as easily. The phrase was no fun kind of thing, which I get, it's policy. How much fun is it going to be? But we talked about maybe even kind of simplifying some of it, maybe an easier version of it. I don't know. Maybe that's what PowerPoints are for.
So just so you know, that is something you're supposed to do anyway, is make an easy read version that's available. So you have the full code, and then you're supposed to have a summary that's an easy read version. So that is a requirement of DFD.
And that's actually in your handbook.
Right.
I think if Dr. Glover shares that the Avon one from the public school, that reads a lot better.
Yeah. By the way, I did just send that out in the chat, in the link that it's there.
It was a lot easier to understand.
So just going back so would we say at this point, we're just for the sake of time, that we're recognizing that would be recommending to keep the current code as is, and maybe just a paragraph of maybe recommending a paragraph of recognition of the restorative kind of work and exploration to be done, the piloting this year on work, and that it's supported by the district in terms of initial training and community building as part of that work, something like that.
I think so. I think because we already have it in place, I think even in that and sharing an updated timeline, you know, because we have the timeline from a couple of years ago, just updating it with the COVID delay into it there. So we set an expectation in the document of this is where we plan on headed. You know what I mean?
Okay. So we could do that after and do that separately.
Yeah, and we'll make it like an appendix, like we do with the safety plans, right? It'll be like Appendix A. And put it on the back end of it and refer to it in the document and like in some type of summary paragraph. And that way it's there, it's acknowledged, it's work that's coming in. And probably even saying there's somewhere that in future renditions of the code of conduct, you'll start, is the intent to have more language that focuses on restorative justice to be included as we improve our practice, as we, work on making this part of our culture, as we learn the skills, knowledge, and abilities that we need to be effective in this approach, or something to that effect.
Right. Right, and I think it's the emphasis next year is that to recognize and support the process of community building as the early work, and training in the process. And then we
Right.
could go through our timeline. Okay.
Hey, anything else?
I just have a quick question. Was part of what somebody said, like it's part of this is community building for the teachers and staff? Is that right?
If you do it correctly, I would say that if it's done correctly, as part of really the process of training and developing the faculty and staff, so there's some formal training, right? We'll have trainers and things like that. We have an outside group or two that we can work with. But part of that is just putting it in practice. So, if we were having a meeting, we might start out with a quick circle or maybe something, we just had something heavy happen in our community and maybe at our faculty meeting the next day, or we have a faculty meeting and we have a circle and we go around and everybody shares or passes, but has an opportunity to talk about their thoughts or how it affected them.
I feel like there's so much going on that
Right.
that would be, a benefit to, I don't know, the staff as a whole. I mean, even just talking about how COVID has affected us. I mean,
Right.
and
And that's
certainly
the whole
all
thing.
of the things that have happened since 2021 has started the year of,
And
this
for
year
us
has
to
really
do
been
it well,
crazy.
we have to participate in it ourselves. It has to be part of our culture and who we are. And just to see how it works, right? To understand your comfort level. In the beginning, sometimes it's easy. You don't start out with heavy stuff even, but it's just the idea. And we've tried it a couple times and Dawn and Danny could say, it's hard in the beginning because someone says something you agree with. And some of the trainers, there's all different spins. Like we put our own culture on it, but in some places you're not supposed to comment. You have a talking stick and you pass it and you have to listen and think about and it's hard not to respond to someone. You're like, oh, I'm totally with you. I totally get that. Or that was the person who wronged and you want to say you're sorry, but it's not your turn. Like learning those pieces so that you can understand and you can coach the kids. And even for adults, that's hard for us. Instead, if you like something, people do like this or something, but not interrupting. And so for us to live it for a while, we have to really live it for a while before we even bring that into the classroom. That's just my thought about it. And so that's why it's a slow roll, really.
Anything else? Okay, so we are at our hour time. That's there. So what I think we have for our next meeting, and I'll resend that list. I was just looking for that list to be able to share with everybody, and I can't find it in my email. So I will see what I can find and resend to you. We'll see if we can't do a little of this work that we talked about tonight and some of these adjustments to the code of conduct. We'll highlight them in a different color or something that's there. And we'll take a look and then we'll just revisit some of the other things that aren't code of conduct related to be able to set and move forward. I know we're meeting at least once prior to the next board meeting. So the group knows that at the June meeting, we plan on doing the public hearing on this because we are required to do a public hearing for the code of conduct. That gives people the opportunity to have public comment, for the board to hear public comment. and ask questions on the document itself. So that'll be coming up. That's June 24th. So I know we're meeting, like I said, at least once, if not twice in between here and there. And with the code of conduct in place, then we'll just wrap up, as we're looking at June. We can just quickly wrap up some of the other pieces, which a lot of the planning work we've already been talking about here has already found its way into some of these other plans. So we're not necessarily developing our own plan, but it's getting incorporated in other places. And that's really the whole idea, is to be able to take these ideas and get them to move forward for there. So if there aren't any other comments, questions, concerns for there, I am going to hit the record button and we'll stop the meeting for the night. Thank you, everybody, for taking time on a very nice, what is it, Wednesday? I don't know. They all blend together. Wednesday evening. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll be emailing you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Yes,
evening.
thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you